Cool. So what we've got in front of us is a brand new chat session with ChatGPT. So the flow for tonight is going to be thus. We're going to start with an ambiguous idea, like we want to visualize something that's interesting. We're going to ask that of ChatGPT. We're going to get back a couple of responses. We've got some designated sort of decision makers to pick ideas. But when we come time to a decision point, I'll ask the audience to go ahead and put your thoughts into the chat, and we'll collect the thoughts. We'll run a highly unofficial poll and find out which direction to go next. It'd be sort of like a nice choose your own adventure kind of situation. We're going to time box this to about 40-ish minutes, which, looking at my clock, is going to put us, we'll finish this up at about 8 o'clock Eastern time. So that way, to leave for like one, so just to be respectful of everyone's time, but two, to make sure we've got room for conversations afterwards, because this can go on literally forever. So we'll be sure to stop it before it takes up the entire night. So what we'll start with here is let's tell it what we're here to do. And a quick AV check. The screen gets a little bit large. Are we able to see this okay? I'll just go ahead and make this a little bit bigger for everyone. Okay, I want to build a web app that visualizes something interesting. What's an interesting topic to visualize? Okay, so we've got a handful of suggestions here. So global internet usage, climate change, space exploration. Wow, these are a lot of different things. Social media trends, stock market performance. So let's try to narrow it down. Stock market performance, and let's be timely. Between that and, say, climate change, which two do we want to go through here?
Throw any suggestions you have into the chat, and we'll do like a quick poll real quick and give Drew some place to go. It looks like number 5, stock market performance, is trending right now.
Okay. Okay. Eking out. I think it's taking the lead.
Let's go.
All right, we're doing that. Cool. I hear you, number 9. That would be cool too. We've got a good momentum on stock market performance. Okay. All right. Let's see. Let's use option. It was option 5. Stock market performance. Let's see. What's an impactful app for this choice? All right. Got another multiple choice here. So let's see. I'm looking at these choices, things that we could maybe do. So I've got real-time stock prices, interactive charts, and say like sector performance. Yeah, I hear you, Nicholas. That'd be fun. All right, I got to vote for sector performance. Okay, I got 2. All right, we're going to go with sector performance. Provide a visual representation of the performance of different market sectors, allowing users to analyze and compare. This can include sector specific. Okay. We're going with choice number 6, sector performance. Sample web app for this. Okay, an outline of a sample web app that visualizes sector performance in the stock market. Provides, that's a lot of stuff. That's a tall order. All right, we're not going to read all of this. Oh, well, yeah. Okay, simplified. And we're going to do just like what any other good developer is going to do. We're going to literally copy paste this. Okay, we're going to come over here.
I'm confused though, Drew. Like, what are the differences between copying and pasting from ChatGPT versus, say, copying and pasting from Stack Overflow?
Stack Overflow is done with human labor, which means it's not as good. All right, we got our app.py. Okay. Go ahead and slide this down a little bit. Okay, so this is totally unscripted. I'm really not sure how this is going to work, but I see already, like, I just want to get this thing up and running, but I don't have pandas installed on my machine, and I certainly don't have all of this installed. I don't want to pollute my machine. Hang on, let's go back over here. Virtually env would also be good. All right, example document file that we can use to containerize this. And also it's going to tell us, for those like, it took us a while to get here. I wasn't able to run the poll to kind of level set where everybody is. For those not super familiar with like the flow of what this looks like, I'll take this response just as a chance to walk through how ChatGPT generally behaves. When you ask it for a code sample, first, it's super happy and cheerful to help. It's going to give you that example, and it's going to walk you through exactly what it's trying to do here. So it'll explain the solution to you as well. Okay, so we've got the Docker file, we've got the commands to build it, but I do know enough to know that I'm in Python. It's doing this run pip install requirements.txt. I don't have that, so I'm going to go ahead and ask ChatGPT to make that for me as well. There we go. Okay. So what we'll do, we'll make this new file here. That's our, I don't know why that says make file. That's weird. So we'll have a requirements.txt. We'll make a new file there. Boop. Have that. And now we can come back and we can make our Docker file. It's from the internet. It's safe. Oh, okay. Nicholas saying that, okay, it's calling that Docker file a make file because that's okay, because the code pretty fires, it's calling it that. I see. All right, we're going to be super naive here and see what works, what doesn't work. I think what it just told me to do now is, okay, once I've got that, let's do our Docker build command. So I'll go ahead and paste that into here. Oh yeah, first what we'll do is start Docker. Bear with me for just a moment, y'all. Still starting.
So Drew, what's so special about Docker Desktop?
Well, Nick, I'm glad you asked. Sometimes it crashes randomly on you. All right, building now, downloading things. While that's downloading, we're going to go ahead and blindly grab the next command that we're going to run.
It's about care and feeding. Please take care of your Docker.
Okay, let's run it and see what breaks. Cool, we've got our first error. Oh no, this is making a hard assumption that we've got data here. Okay, we're just going to tell it this. Hey, ChatGPT, this doesn't work. Paste in our error. Well, don't ask why, ask how can I fix it?
Or better yet, just say fix it.
Or just fix it. Yeah, I wonder. Yeah. I think Nicholas is right. I was hoping it would be like, well, you don't have any data, so you got to make it.
I opt to be as polite as possible to these AIs. They're probably going to remember everything I said to them. They'll spare me during the AI revolution.
Uh-huh. Say please occasionally. I don't have that. Can you make it for me? Please. There we go. Okay. Copy code sector data.csv. And was it an underscore? My goldfish memory is really bad.
Right there on your screen.
What's that?
Oh, it said on the screen what's missing.
Oh yeah, you're right. It was right there. All I gotta do is look. Okay. Still not expecting this to work because I'm sure there's still work to do for like actually mounting the file. Well, that didn't work at all.
That's is it running in the background?
It said run. There was no -d on there. Let's see.
Huh.
All right, let's
Yeah.
actually examine the app. Oh wait, does this actually visualize anything?
I see a Docker icon that's open in the on your bottom right there. What is that?
That's just Docker Desktop.
Oh, I see.
I wonder if it like made a temporary file on the inside the container file system and then just exited.
It might have created another container space in Docker, honestly.
Yeah.
It should be a VM.
And anyway, this isn't what I asked for. I asked for a web app. Let's see. Gotta be nice. For web browsers, like I was kind of hoping it would come up with like a Flask app. Here we go. New code. Oh, it's giving me a lot of homework. Okay, so I see a new app and I see two HTML templates. Let's get the new app. This one's actually using a Flask. So I'm kind of confident in this one. Paste that guy in there. Okay. Yeah, we're gonna have to put that in the requirements. All right, two HTML files. So in a new templates folder. So make a new folder called templates and then put in index.html. Okay, index.html and sector.html. Okay, that's our two files. And because I know that something has changed here, we're bringing in more libraries. I need a new requirements.txt. Oh, I thought I was a little bit more. Okay, requirements.txt. Pow. All right, maybe we can get something a little more interesting this time. Yeah, I was a little worried when I saw it wanted to install like Panda, so like that might take a moment. right, good. Okay, so now, okay, I think we're getting somewhere. Let's make a new. So we should have something listening on localhost now. I think it was on 5,000. Yeah, so seen this before. Now this one, I'm kind of breaking away from the script here. I was tooling around with this a little bit earlier. For reasons I still don't. I think it's listen. Like for some reason, so this is running on a Windows box in Docker Desktop in WSL2. So I guess it's just like begging for things to fail in spectacular and curious ways. I've had to explicitly tell it to listen on Quad 0 instead of just localhost. Okay. If we run this again. Nope. Okay, unless someone can remember the exact incant for app.run, I'll just ask ChatBro again. I'm just going to steal that last line. I don't think we have to copy paste all this again. There we are. Not listen, host. Rebuild. Rerun. No stack trace. No stack trace. Okay. Let's try again. We got a thing. I have no idea if this is going to work. Select a sector. Technology. Okay. Now I thought I made that. Oh no, I put that in the wrong folder. See, even with something like this, we're still going to make human mistakes. Rebuild, rerun, reload. And refresh, okay. Neat. I have no idea what I'm looking at. Okay. So, well, let's see. We go back here. More fake data. Cool. Okay. I've got some ideas of where to go from here. We're at kind of another. So how about this? There is a system, an API system. Let's see, what is it called? So I recently learned about this, Alpha Vantage. So they've got an API that they use. A lot of it, some of it is premium, but some of it is also, it's like available for free. They just rate limit you on some stuff. So I'll pause to get some input or some direction from the crowd if we want to do something different. But what I'm thinking is this is a great start, but this is static data. I'd like to pull from an API set and visualize something dynamically. I'll pause if to let anyone either chime in, either yay or nay.
Throw input in chat.
Ooh,
We get some celebration here.
I know. Okay, we definitely want to see the API. Nicholas is asking me to walk on a freaking tightrope. Let's see. Well, you know what? Nothing ventured, nothing gained. Let's go back to the start. This is cool. But I'm looking for something more dynamic. Can you help me? Nicholas, feel free. Do you know that there might, I want to hear ChatGPT answer it, but do you know also if there might be some free APIs for something like that?
Noah has free APIs, but they're rate limited, which shouldn't be a problem for us.
Yeah, not for us. Visualize, let's see. Preferably by map plot line. Okay, was it? Ooh, open weather map. Let's see, do I have that? Let's see, open weather map. Right. Well, let's see. Okay, so we've got a new Python app. Okay. New templates. We've got a new, I guess this is the index HTML. Oh, weather.html. Obviously. Okay, API key. Okay, let's see what we can do with this. I've got some key that might be what we're looking for. Let's see. So this one hard codes it, right? If I look at this code in here, API key equal your API key. We're running this inside a container. We should pull this out of the environment. There we go. So now we get it from the environment. Okay. Copy. Let's see. I'm trying to decide where. So let's take all that junk. Yep, into there. Yep, get it all out of there. This is why I should use VS Code a little bit more often. Okay, we're gonna start from scratch. Get it all out of there. Fold it up. New file. Paste. Okay. Recreate our templates folder. And I think it had one called weather. Oh, that's my new code. Okay, just a single one. Yes, all right. So inside templates, let's make a new file, weather.html, paste it in there. Okay, we got our HTML template. We grabbed our code. I need a new requirements.txt and I need a new Docker file. Sometimes you got to be a little bit explicit with it.
Nicholas brought up a good point in chat about, there's probably going to be a need for domain knowledge and what you're writing an app for, right? That might be a little bit of a barrier, right? Like you don't necessarily know what's good or bad as a solution unless you know a little bit about what you're trying to code towards.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so, like especially getting started in a new domain, right? Like just having a sample goes a long way. All right, let's do this. I have a key laying around that I think is what I want. Avert your eyes, internet. Bear with me 1 second. Nicholas is right. I should ask ChatGPT to write an app that scrapes GitHub for an old key. Let's get that out of there. Okay, this might work. Okay, I was asking it for the requirements.txt. Okay, that's the Docker file. Here's the requirements.txt. Okay. And let's see. Docker desktop is still running. Okay. I really feel like I overlooked something, but let's give it a shot. The best way to find out your error is to just run it. We were talking about the magic mirror earlier. That's one of the things I had to do was get an API key for Open Weather Map. Okay, let's see what we got wrong. This is not the app anymore. Oh, you know what? We're hitting that silly thing again.
And watch, everyone, as Drew has become completely reliant upon ChatGPT writing all of the code, even though he knows what to add.
I know it. So the reason that I do this is to build the context so that if I have to ask it to do like a non-trivial change in the future, this will exist in its context. And when it rewrites it, it's going to know to drop that in there. However, there's a totally valid point, Nick. I can already feel myself getting dull doing this.
So, you bring up a good point, right? So you talk about context. Can you tell everyone who's on the call here what you mean by that, as far as, letting ChatGPT know what's going on?
Yeah. So ChatGPT draws from what my small understanding is effectively the internet, all the way up to roughly 2 years ago or something like that.
2021, September 2021.
There you go. So it's got like tons of information to draw upon. This is a kind of an important part where you want to be specific when you ask for things. So I can say things like, can you update it to listen on Quad 0? I can only say that because in this very specific chat that's on the window, it's already got all of this in its context right now. So when I make an ask of it in the future, my conversation so far becomes a part of that set of data that it considers when it generates the response. And like, kind of side note, these are all my other sort of conversations that I've had with it. So like each of those is a separate conversation with its own context. Thanks for that reminder, Nick.
No problem. That's what I'm here for, man. So next question for you that I already know the answer for, but I'm not here for answers. I'm here for questions. So if you talk to this thing about this app for a couple hours and you build out more functionality and stuff like that, is all of that part of the context?
That's my understanding. Yeah.
It actually has stuff fall off at the end.
That effect. How far back does it go?
It's like a number of tokens. Nicholas might know exactly the number of it, but it can only keep so much stuff in its memory. So one of the failings that you might find if you lean on this too hard to build a really comprehensive web app or some other thing is that it will forget other things that you've done in the past. And so, things like, oh, we've like chosen a color scheme for like our Tailwind CSS and stuff like that. Like it won't remember that. It won't remember that your code is in a certain structure. So once things start to fall out of its memory, you'll get mixed results. And so one of the things that I tell folks is that like for little things like this, playing around, if you have targeted questions that don't require a lot of like, I need to understand the structure of this code project that has, 50 files in it and different directories and how things tie together. As long as you're not doing something like that, ChatGPT is a really good learning aid for like I didn't know how to write TypeScript earlier this year, and now I'm like starting to work through it with the help of ChatGPT. Like it's my one-on-one tutor, but I don't expect it to write a full web app for me, right? So just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
So
Good point.
can you save where you were and come back to it?
So like this chat window that Drew has open, right? Like you can see all of his past history. You can come back to this, and it's not going to lose however many tokens it had saved up in its context, but the context is limited per conversation.
You think it has an answer to that?
Sure.
Let's see. Oh yeah, and Stephanie, or sorry, Summer pointed out you can edit. You can go back and rewrite history, edit your prompts as well. My responses are generated based on patterns and information present in the data that I was trained on. I don't have persistent memory. This means I don't have context about the entire conversation history and can only provide a response based on the individual queries provided in the current session. Well, it says in the current session, but we know that it doesn't remember like everything in this session, right, Nick?
Yeah, so I think it's the last sentence of the first paragraph that is the most important, right? I don't have persistent memory or the ability to recall specific conversations beyond a few recent interactions. So whatever a few recent interactions entails, it's some number of tokens or words. Like in ChatGPT, a token is a word.
Right.
So it can cache some number of stuff, but like I asked it one time to take a look at some code. Okay, tell me if there's some way to optimize this, and I ended up throwing like a crap ton of code at it. And there's a limit to what you can put into it too. So there are limits to what its capabilities are right now. From what I hear, ChatGPT is trying to build in the ability to upload files. I'm not sure how it's going to handle large files, whether it will be able to contextualize all of that. But these are all really interesting limitations early on that we'll probably see get dashed in short order. I think that ChatGPT 4 right now has an input token limit of like 4,000 or so, as Nicholas was saying. But they're working on releasing mainstream a version with 32,000 tokens. So there's a lot of money being put into this right now.
Summer, I see your comment on that you can edit the prompts and it'll save different versions of your prompts. So does that mean like I can create two parallel timelines? I've never actually bothered editing a prompt.
Yeah, I did that to go back, and I didn't think of asking it to update the code. So.
Oh yeah, I guess that's actually a better way than what I'm doing here. Like let's create two things that are completely different answers. Oh, that's disappointing.
Yeah, it didn't take the opportunity to say wah pa 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 pow. Hotty 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 ho.
/ internet meme. See, you can take a break and have fun with it too.
Right, and then you can scroll back to the previous version of the prompt, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, so is that... Oh, okay, that's how you toggle between the two. Or I guess if I made 3, you just switch among all the different ones. Yeah, okay. Oh man, that's weird. That's like folding, but harder to keep in my head. So, I mean, honestly, y'all, I was thinking we'd do really well to have like one app written, and so far we're up to 2. One of them is pulling from an API. There's a lot of different directions that we can go with this in the conversation. I was kind of curious where the group would like to go. Like if curious about other use cases or anything else that's on your mind with this thing.
So, I mean, one thing to sort of like build on what we already have, right?
Mhm.
That I think is cool is that, like, if you were to tell ChatGPT that this looks like garbage, make it look prettier, like what would it say, right? Like, hey, can you add some CSS to this so that it doesn't look terrible?
Iterate on it.
Yeah,
All right, let's see.
like I'm not into GeoCities sites. Can you do something about this? That was for the older crowd, by the way.
Older crowd, I feel attacked. Let's give it a really vague ask. Oh yeah, that's not what I was asking. Okay, this is a new app. Applied some styling to the chart. Oh, it updated the chart. You see that, Nick? You see this? You see this? It listens on quad 0. That's why I had to rewrite it earlier.
You're smart. I'm dumb. Got it.
I don't think this is really going to make it look any better. Oh, look at that. Here we are. See? I told you Docker Desktop crashes. That's a feature. All right.
You know, if you had a Linux machine and you just installed Docker on it, you wouldn't have these problems.
I wouldn't have these problems at all. I do not have a witty quip to reply to that. This is absolutely a substandard way of living, and I know better. I rocked out on a Linux desktop for probably the better part of 12 years of my career as my daily workhorse. And I retired to Windows with WSL, and my inner child dies a little bit more every day. Okay. What did you do for us, ChatGPT? Uh-huh. I mean,
Ooh,
it made a blue line.
fancy. Tell it that you just want to implement some Tailwind CSS. See what it says.
I'm going to combine that with the chat suggestion that we just had in here. Let's put those together.
Oh, that's a good one. Please add a thing to my app.
Can you add? I'm going to stick with Tailwind. Can Tailwind? Tailwind, right?
Yep.
Please add that. Oh, this looks like work.
Tell it that you don't want to install Tailwind locally. It can source it from the internet.
Ah. There we go. All right, let's get to work. On the weather.html, add this line. It's asking me to add a bunch of things. I just need a summary version. We're probably approaching that limit where it's going to start forgetting some things.
Yeah, probably.
Pulling from the CDN. Cool. Okay. Weather.html. Well, that certainly looks more interesting. Now, you think maybe that's enough? Just I mean, that should be enough, right?
I would imagine.
Modify to include. Oh yeah, this is no longer necessary because it's pulling it from the CDN. Favorite way of finding out.
I think I have an idea of what might fail.
Mhm.
And it further illustrates some of the problems that you might encounter. So
Mhm.
yeah, see how it says failed to load resource. The last time that I tried to ask it to use Tailwind in an app,
Ah,
it gave me that URL, which doesn't exist anymore.
yeah.
So I did end up finding it, and I just dropped a link in the chat for you. Um, so another failing of ChatGPT is that it doesn't know about the last 2 years. So when things go away and change and versions update and things like that, it doesn't have any of that contextual knowledge either.
Yeah. Kind of like keep it simple. Oh, that hurt deep, Summer. I think we've all felt that.
Yep. Search in the company wiki.
Just like searching the company wiki. Look at that. We did a thing. Okay.
Yeah, that looks better.
Marginally. I mean, it is completely written by a machine. I promised the room we would call it at 8. I feel like we're there. I mean, like we can do this forever, right? I mean, I had mentioned that like I've made the little magic mirror module, and I don't know anything about Node.js, but was able to do this. I know some teammates that have managed to not managed. They've used this to troubleshoot like Kubernetes clusters. They've literally like copy pasted errors from deployments in Kubernetes, and it's like at least pointed them in the right direction or told them, oh yeah, it's like some really weird archaic bug that was in like 4 versions ago that you're hitting again, and you have to go and update this.
How is that different than just doing something like in Google, just putting it into Google?
Yeah, that's a great question. To me, Nick, do you have your own response to that?
I do. So if you've ever had somebody say, how come you can search on the internet and find answers to things and I can't? Google Flu is a real thing, right? Like, you need to be able to interpret the results. You need to be able to, type the right things in that you're looking for into Google, much like this prompt, right? So the other thing is that you have multiple sources of truth at that point, right? Like if we were asking it, like, how do I add Tailwind? You might get some blogs, you might get some Stack Overflow stuff, and you're gonna have to read through all of that. And you're not sure, like, what should I use? How does that pertain to my particular app? So, when you just ask ChatGPT, it knows the app that you're building. It can give you direction on exactly what to do. So it can be a springboard when you just want it to tell you the thing to type, right?
So it's sort of just a better search engine.
I mean, so right now with it being capped at 2021, September 2021, in its knowledge of things on the internet, I would hesitate to call it a search engine. There are some plugins that you can add into ChatGPT if you pay for it, which I do, because like it's $20 a month and totally freaking worth it.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer.
So with plugins, you can add in a link reader plugin, and I've had it. Like I run a company. One right there. So like when I have to write things about like, oh, what does my company do or whatever, right? Like we have stuff on our website. I can go look at the website and I can like pick through stuff and cobble it together into some other phrasing and then like give it to somebody that needs it. Or I could just say like, hey, ChatGPT, can you read this website real quick and just like summarize what this company does? And it's magic, right? Like, so it can reach out to specific websites, summarize them, use it as input information to make other, text copy or whatever. So like that part is good, but like it doesn't have broad search capabilities.
And to that last point that Nick made, if I can just demonstrate that, right? I'm going to make a new chat session here, like in a fictitious scenario, right? And again, like the sort of details and specifics of your ask matter in this. So like, I work at Syndicated Incorporated as an accountant. I'm going for a promotion this year. Help me write a cover letter explaining to my boss why I deserve that. And now this is where like details matter. Include that I saved the company $50 million this year, avoiding a tax audit, and that I play a mean guitar at the company picnics. Limit it to 1 page. And go, right? This is like totally fictional and silly, but before I can finish explaining what's going on here, it's done writing this. And it's even got it templated for me. So like you don't have to start from the same way that you don't have to start from scratch with coding projects. Same thing applies for like, I mean, basically anything. This is where some of the clickbait comes from with like ChatGPT is taking people's jobs and things like that, because people kind of make those logical leaps when they see something like this.
Yep. And I just want to switch over to some of the stuff in the chat, if that's okay.
Yes.
So Rick brought up a great point in pertaining to the delay that we were talking about, right? Like not having stuff past. Not sure why my screen just jumped all over the place. Not having stuff past September 2021. That ChatGPT could be telling you to write code that has security vulnerabilities in it that have been discovered in the past year and a half, 2 years, right? So it's not going to supplant the need for like in an organization having those DevSecOps checks, right? Like having things inside of your CI/CD that are doing, static analysis or whatever other security gates you have in your development process. So don't be surprised if like the code that you put in there all of a sudden it doesn't make it through tests inside of your code pipelines if you're using it for work, or somebody from security comes down after the fact and says, hey, you see this dashboard over here, you want to take a look at that for me, please? And then also jumping over to Micah's comment, or I guess question, how susceptible is ChatGPT to misinformation, as in while using it as a learning device? So I guess the answer to that is very. We had the little skit at the beginning, right? Where, I corrected myself and said that, yeah, COBOL is the most popular language for DevOps, right? Like, ChatGPT, I feel like it is a very accommodating person, right? Like it wants to make you happy. So like if you turn around and tell it, something that it told you is wrong, it'll agree with you. And likewise, if there's something in the prompt that has it say something that's not quite true, people are getting in trouble now for like not fact checking ChatGPT. I don't know if anybody's been following the news where like a lawyer asked ChatGPT about like some case law or something like that for a submitted case, and it gave some bull information, and now this lawyer is having to like explain themselves to the judge, like, oh well, I thought it was a search engine, I didn't know what it was. Like, no, that's not how this works. Large language models have some context that they can draw from, but ultimately what they're doing is chaining together the best word to come next, right? Like that's kind of their job. And so they're good at writing, some copy with, some limited input and stuff like that. But like once you start to get into hard problems right now, large language models just aren't the solution to everything.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, my naive understanding is really at the heart, it's just a text prediction engine on steroids.
Yeah. Like if anybody's used in Gmail where, it wants to try and insert the next word that it thinks is going to be in your sentence, it's like that, but a lot smarter.
Yeah, and I think like to the point of like the misinformation and being wrong, that's I've heard that referred to as hallucinations is what they call them, which I think is funny. I hope we keep that as a term.
Yeah.
And yes, Judy is right. It's Clippy plus plus. The new plan is the old plan all over again.
Yeah.
Funny you say that. With Microsoft's heavy investment in OpenAI, not in the form of Clippy, but that's already coming in. That's already happening. That's why, like, if you have a Windows machine on your lock screen, they're like, "Hey, you want to see the new predictive text or the new generative AI features of Bing?" You're like, "We totally plugged it in." Yeah, thanks for that, Nick.
Anything for you, buddy?
Appreciate that. So we're 10 minutes past 8 o'clock, y'all. It's a school night. This is officially the Q&A section. If you gotta go, we totally understand. But we're happy to stay back, and I think we've made a pretty good point with the demo there. But yeah, we'll keep the floor open for further conversations, questions on the topic. I see we got a new thing in the chat now.
So in the coding example, ChatGPT
Right.
appears to have a complete understanding of Python syntax rather than just predicting the next word. I think that goes into like the additional smarts that we're kind of talking about. The predicting the next word does apply to the code as well. And what it's using for input at that point is like it has access to all of the Python docs. It has access to all of Stack Overflow. And that's one of the things that, companies like Stack Overflow are not happy about, right? Like they used the information that they've been aggregating on their websites to help people in order to like steal that user base, right? And yeah, so Simmer brought up that Reddit is closing some of its data. Stack Overflow is talking about the same thing. They're talking about essentially charging for their data. Some of these companies too. I think Stack Overflow said that they would charge some fee to OpenAI or something like that in order to allow them to still do what they're doing. But imagine this. I know I'm jumping around a lot. That's how my brain works. So imagine this. ChatGPT came out. It's capped at September of 2021, right? They do another, aggregation of information, and it goes up to, 2024 or something like that. In the time that ChatGPT has been running and people have been using it, they haven't been using Stack Overflow. Imagine that in the world. So all of a sudden, the new information generated by people that the computer is trained off of is now declining, right? And so now let's fast forward 10 years where everybody's using ChatGPT. There's actually no new content that's being generated on these input websites that is fueling these decisions. So there's a lot of people that are very forward looking that are trying to, I don't know, raise flags early on and say like, hey, this could be a problem for us.
So how would this change the thoughts of AI? Because you used to have you have to test AI, like the chats. How do you test it?
I have no idea what you're asking.
AI has to be trained. has to be trained on the AI, like pictures, strings, and everything. You have to test it. How do you test the systems?
I think it's more of training versus testing. Like the,
Okay,
I think
training, yes.
like the power is in the model, right? So
Yeah, I mean, so this is a really, really broad question. I don't know if it's something that we want to address right here, but um, these folks who build models of any kind, um, there's obviously training data, and then they do um, testing within their framework in order to see, whether or not things are the way that they think they should be. And so, like Google, for instance, or other folks who use like CAPTCHA, or like, find the traffic lights in this, right? Like that's not just them trying to do security checks. They're also using us as users to train their models, right? So, Google has a vested interest in knowing where traffic lights are because they run Google Maps. If they, give all these, street data photos to people for security purposes and have them pick out the lights on them, then they can train their model on it. And so, there's a lot of slick things that people are doing in order to train these things at scale, with the amount of data that they're trying to throw at them. But like this is like a whole nother talk, I think.
So long term, like, is this a tool that just sort of like for let's say a developer, just a tool that just increases developer productivity and maybe just make development easier and more available to more people, or is it is it something that's going to be like would it like decrease the demand, replace like like technical people? For instance, what I'm saying is, I mean, when you're developing this application, you still have to know sort of a little bit about Docker and so forth in order to put everything together, right? So it's almost like just like sort of Googling something, pasting it in there, no, but a little more powerful, I assume,
Yeah.
right? So is this long term? Is this something that's that just sort of the difference between like reading a help file and using Google versus something like a little more revolutionary?
Yeah, I think that um, my opinion, at least, is that in the short term, it is a tool to be used by people who kind of know what they're doing. Um, like Nicholas alluded to before, you have to have some sort of domain knowledge on the thing that you're doing so that you know what it's telling you is accurate and will work. And when it doesn't quite work, you can go about trying to figure out how you would fix that. A lot like the Tailwind 404, right? Like things didn't look quite right, but unless you bring up the browser console and to do that, you wouldn't see the 404, you wouldn't understand what it means, and you wouldn't know how to go about trying to find an alternate source for the Tailwind on another CDN somewhere. So like you kind of have to know a little bit about what you're doing. And I think it can be like a force multiplier, right? Like it can make devs better and more efficient. But you definitely, yeah, as Judy brought up, you have to know the right questions to ask, and you have to know how to interpret the results properly. And so, I think that it can make mediocre developers better. I think that it can make great developers faster. And the only thing that I would say is that when you're like a junior dev or you're starting out with a language, like I'm using it to sort of springboard my knowledge on like front end development, which I've never done in my career, right? Like I've always been like a back end or systems guy. You can use it for that, but you need to know a little bit about other facets of things so that you can like say, okay, this is explaining this concept to me. This is giving me some example code. And then I'm going to go ahead and look at other sources as well. just like everything in life, right? Like if you use one source as the gospel, you're asking for trouble. So like whether it be news sources or whatever, if I just relied on Drew for my information of what's going on in the world, it's a crapshoot. It relies upon what Drew knows and is willing to talk to me about. So get your information from multiple sources.
Is this a tool of the future that could make like programming and application development more available, like beyond? I mean, if it could grow to what we're seeing from beyond what we're seeing now, to more than just technical people, like for instance, for a long time they've been trying to see if they can get let's say like doctors to automate like their own like whatever like
Yeah.
or so forth. Is this a tool that long term could do that? So it could make like application development more available to more people?
Microsoft calls them citizen developers, right? Like, the people inside of an organization that are not developers, that have domain knowledge, that they want to try and make an app or automate some part of the workflow. So they don't have to rely upon developers in order to do that. I think that right now, this might change in the future, but right now, it's asking for trouble to expect somebody who has no previous computer, like in-depth IT or software development knowledge to say like, okay, you're going to go write an app that does this thing, right? I think that the things that are really targeting those types of folks are still the low code and no code platforms, right? Like where you're stringing together boxes on a screen that do stuff. And people might understand the data and the processes that they need to do. And so they can go to like a UI and they can say, okay, I want to do this thing first. And then that output goes to this thing and then goes to this thing. Those are really the platforms that make a lot more sense to those folks who don't have a lot of knowledge, right? When it comes to software development. If, my mom did this that Drew did today, right? Like he's like pasting stuff into VS Code and starting up Docker Desktop and stuff like that. And my mom would be like, what's a Docker Desktop? Like, so there are limits.
Yeah, I had a friend who worked in the financial industry like a long time ago, and so much of his job was putting like algorithms from like that financial analyst would give him and try to implement that. And I'm wondering if this is a tool that eventually long term could just make those financial analysts be able to do some of those algorithms themselves. Yeah, they would give him an equation or something like that, and then he would code it up and then write a little like front end for them.
Yeah, I think
that could.
There's a possibility that like with the right training data, like imagine a world in which OpenAI didn't ingest all of the internet, right? And instead just focused on code, being a code first platform. Like I'm going, I may be getting closer to what GitHub Copilot is trying to do, right? There might be a world in which you could just like say, hey, this is what I want as an outcome. Go ahead and do it for me, and have it spit something out that just gets productized. But there's a lot of follow-on processes that would need to happen in order for that to be efficient, right? Like, you would have to have some sort of automated test process afterwards to say like, did this or did this not fulfill your needs? Like we took this thing, we spit it out into this other thing, made sure that like it passed all sort of, code requirements, and then, deployed it. We could try and do that thing right now. That'd be kind of a pretty good project. I'm not saying on this call, I'm just saying like, with ChatGPT, asking it like, hey, build me an app that does this thing, right? It'd have to be small scale. But we could probably put together like a pipeline that like took something and deployed it, and then said like, hey, is this what you wanted? Yes or no. Rate my performance on this development project. That would be pretty neat.
So one more question. I don't need to hog up the entire conversation, but like how about these interactive like phone responses right now? Like you would call some company and they'd go through all these crazy prompts and it drives you nuts. Is AI is that something that AI could potentially long term make it much better that people wouldn't go nuts using them?
Those phone systems are designed to make you want to hang up. So they have no incentive whatsoever to try and make your life easier.
I see. Are you serious about that? Are you?
No, I'm dead serious, man. Like they only have so many people to answer the phones, right? So like they want you to hang up and give up and say like, I don't have time for this. I'm gonna go look on the internet, because it's expensive for them to have a call center in which they're like answering these phones and answering questions. It takes up people's times. So yeah, I mean, they absolutely don't want you to stick around. They're gonna make your life hell.
How about in cases where like maybe they start triage something like before it goes to like a real person, like for instance, like a doctor, right? Like you go to the doctor's office, provide like the your insurance card, how are you feeling today? What's wrong with you? And then it gets all the information, and then maybe gives the doctor some advice or something else so that he is that something that potentially long term could like you say, my stomach hurts, and he says, okay, well this this and it's been hurting for 3 days, and then it would go to the doctors, okay, this is what the patient's reporting, and then process their insurance cards and all that, and then this is what the patient's reporting, this is what we you might want to look at as far as why the patient is that something that
So
Possible.
there's already a proto version of that. Like literally this afternoon, I was reading an article on AI applied to medicine, and like parts of it are already there to include like what you're talking about. Patient presents with symptoms ABC. What should we do? The article I was reading had nurses on call who would receive phone calls from people, and they would bring their complaints and etc. And the nurses would then feed that information into an AI system, which would then generate thoughts on next steps.
The problem with those systems, though, is that from a systems design perspective, they're going to be complex once you start to try and do end-to-end patient care, right? Because right now what's happening is that these models are using input data to make themselves better. How does that apply to HIPAA laws, right? Like all of a sudden you're aggregating a bunch of patient information and what their ailments are, and it's just in this mass. Like, how do you do data security at that point? So I think there's a lot of
recognition of the user, or a code or a PIN. There's already chatbots out there for healthcare.
I don't think you understand the full complexity of what goes into that, man, because like you can't just say from a user perspective, you can categorize end to end what somebody can access and what somebody can't in a large language model. I mean, like, have you implemented one before?
For a call-in system from IBM, I did it. It was a chatbot.
I'm not talking about chatbots.
You're talking about different AI systems now. There's different ways to do it. That's an architecture.
Yes, but even let's just assume that you could anonymize the data and give them like a unique ID in place of like the personal information. The challenge is like those sanitization techniques aren't sufficient anymore. It's no longer difficult to take like 2 or 3 data points and reconstruct the persona from there. So like that's why it gets complex, because if we're talking about aggregating like millions or tens of millions of identities into there, it's like you could try to clean that as much as you want, man, but that is still almost impossible.
About public versus private. you're talking about public versus private right now.
Well, we're
Aggregated.
clearly not going to change your mind on this.
So even with like if all those hurdles were like surpassable, I mean, these is it at this point or looking at in the future, is it something that's even for doctors, right? Just like for programmers, is it something that's going to be replacing or just making them more productive? Just it seems like to me like just like for a programmer, right? It's just right. This for the foreseeable future is something that just sort of makes doctors more or nurses more productive, right? Or accurate or better, right?
Yeah, I don't think that we're at the point, there's a lot of folks that are worried about AI taking their jobs eminently. And realistically, I think the people that are in eminent danger are the people in positions that kind of have like, I don't want to trivialize anybody's job, right? But like it's the easier jobs that ChatGPT is capable of taking at this point. People like, oh, AI is going to replace copywriters, right? Like if you've ever read what ChatGPT spits out most of the time, it's not good, right? Like, sure, it could replace somebody writing copy for a website or, advertising or something like that, but it's not going to like sell product, man. Like the stuff that it writes is not appealing. It's not enticing. It doesn't have that quality to it that makes you want to do the thing, buy the thing, whatever. And so, even though it can spit stuff out and it can write words, right? Like, I feel like it's closer to, writing high school essays. When we were in high school and they said, write a 3-page essay, we're all like, okay, I'm trying to like get my spacing right so I can get it out to 3 pages, right? Like, that's what it's doing. It's like, okay, I'm going to fill up this document with relevant text, but is it actually good to read? Is it appealing? Does it, fulfill all of the criteria, things like that? Those are all questions that are more difficult to have. So like, I don't think it's going to replace many jobs near term. And I think that in the near term, especially, jobs will be moved, right? Like somebody's job might go away and be supplanted and then create another job, right? Like somebody, Marcus, put a prompt engineering link in the chat that everybody should check out. Prompt engineering is a real job now. You can go and search for jobs for prompt engineering. And essentially what your job is like determining what things you should put in the little box that are going to give you the right results. And so, like that job popped up, somebody else's job might have gone away. So from a broad economic sense, no jobs have gone away, right? For that person whose job it was to write whatever thing and now can't do that because it was taken over by AI, that sucks, right? Like they can't immediately go and be a prompt engineer necessarily. Like, I don't know what their skills are. So, some people might find that their jobs go away, but as a, macroeconomic sense, I don't think jobs are going to go away and be given to computers.
But productivity increases though. So the current jobs, a lot of times they'll be able to do more, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But like my argument to that is always, just because one person can now do more, I don't think that the available jobs go down. Like if you've looked at how many open jobs there are, like say in cybersecurity right now, it's a ridiculous sum. And it's to the point now where I'm like looking at the numbers of how many jobs are open. I'm like, there aren't that many people, right? So like you have this abundance of jobs and not as many people in cybersecurity that are there to fill them. So you have people there. If you make them more efficient, it obviates the need for these unfillable jobs, right? Like, the number of open jobs will decrease, but those weren't going to be fillable jobs anyway. There isn't enough people to fill them all.
Right. I was telling my a friend of mine that one of the one of the limitations to software development is just that it's so labor intensive, that if these AI systems can make them a little bit less labor intensive, you can develop more software, right? You can have more software and be available to more people.
Yeah. Anybody on this call who, or watching it after the fact, who codes should check out GitHub Copilot. Or I think GitLab is releasing something, or just recently released something similar. But that has amplified my ability to churn out code faster, without having to like leave VS Code. So definitely check that out if you haven't already, because there are efficiencies to be had right now using AI that will make you more productive.
If you are on AWS, there's Code Whisperer also as an alternative. And the ServiceNow guys have just released a few weeks ago StarCoder. So there's a number of alternatives that are coming out, and putting them head to head. Some of them are better depending on the language that you're writing in.
Yeah.
Some of them perform better. So it may be worth taking a look at the alternatives also.
Cool.
And on
yeah.
that note, I actually saw a GitHub repo called AutoGPT. I mean, that was pretty interesting too. So the product that we developed, right, we actually intervened in midway, like we write a Docker file and write web app separately. So instead of just giving one prompt, I mean, instead of giving multiple prompts in the AutoGPT, if you just give one prompt, stating that built me a stock market application that should run on Docker and that should do all this, that product actually gives me the entire file structure as well, including the file structure along with the code. So I think that's pretty interesting. I mean, that should further reduce the boilerplate code, as instead of the human copying and pasting the code. I think that's even more interesting, right? I mean, I never thought that could be possible, at least for the next couple of months or years. So that was a little interesting.
Yeah, I think that's like kind of the next logical step, right? Is like we had an idea of a web app, and like we knew that we had to stitch things together. Like I knew that I was in Python. I knew I needed a requirements.txt if it was going to work. Like I knew all those things. So I knew enough to ask it specifically, but like to give an ambiguous task and for the machine to figure out the tasks that it has to do and to assemble them together into a successful workflow, to me sounds like the sort of next logical step in this process. Man, I feel like my comment just killed it. Nick just like kept it going for like 30 minutes.
I can talk forever.
Yeah, there's
no, as you guys mentioned, there are still security concerns, but as these technologies develop, there are new security attacks also develop along with these, right? Like, I know there are prompt injections going on right now, but I mean, like on a day-to-day basis, as one grows, I mean, subsequently the security issues also as will grow, right? So is there a possibility that we can, like, the security can go ahead without the technology growth? As in, like, if this comes into picture, this is not going to happen. So is there like a, so you mentioned HIPAA rules, right? So is there a, like, if you're developing a product, like we do requirements and testing, so is there a way that we can come up with a product's requirement testing before we develop the product? As in, is there a way to predict what security issues are going to happen in future?
I mean, if you can do that, you're going to make a lot of money, man. So let me know.
yeah, that's like Minority Report for software.
Yeah, right. I think that's what a lot of like visionary thinkers are like noodling on right now, right? I'm kind of like a more tactical guy. I want to know how to use things, how to bend them to my will, that type of stuff, like what they're capable of. But there are people out there that their brains just work differently, right? And those are the people that are like true visionaries, and are imagining what the future is going to look like, and saying like, okay, well, when this happens, then like these are the repercussions of that. And it's not an easy thing, right, to go through those scenarios. So like if you can become one of those people, right, and like tweak your brain to a point where you're like one of those top X% of people that are true visionaries and can forward think like that. I think that you'll be really successful, because it's definitely not an easy thing to think through all that.
But for every person that's doing all this very smart about security, there's somebody that's that smart that's on the other side of the fence thinking of new ways to take advantage of vulnerabilities. So, right?
Yeah, I mean, cybersecurity especially is very adversarial. So you have the different sides that are always competing, and unless something fundamentally changes, I feel like the attacker always has the edge, right? So I view it a lot like football. The wide receiver knows the route that they're going to go on. The defender doesn't, right? They're just trying to keep up. And so cybersecurity to me is a lot like that, right? Like the attacker knows what they're aiming for, right? And a defender, all they can do is like look for signs that they're going to change direction, and try to keep up, and then see if they can swat down the pass to the last minute. So I don't know, take that for what you think it's worth.
So is pattern recognition one of the strengths of AI right now? So for instance, in your example, like let's just say a defensive back, if he had an AI and he knew like first and 10, second and 5, wide receiver is 6'4", look for a out route or something like up and out or something. Is that something, or in the security cases, like let's say they're like they have sensors into the data of your network, right? And then they're identifying, they're checking through IP addresses, port numbers, and they're saying, or and text strings and so forth, and then they can get all the put all the data together and say, hey, it seems like something's attacking us right now. These are what our responses should be. Is that something that is a strength that the AI could be doing for us?
Yeah. I mean, like, so to talk on both sides of it, right? Like we started with the football analogy. That type of data is currently being crunched, right? Like, I don't know if you watch the games, but they're like, AWS is sponsoring the data, right? Like that, all of this play-by-play data, who's going where, what, down in distance, all of those things are going into these huge models, and teams are using that to try and like play chess essentially, right? Like what are they going to do? Because I want to try and figure out what I'm going to do in order to mitigate what they're going to do. And then somebody else is like, oh, well, if they're going to do that and they think I'm going to do this, then, I'm going to do this other thing instead, right? Like that's what it's come to at this point. Data is a huge advantage in the NFL right now. And that's the case everywhere, right? Like your data is your gold for every organization, because you might be able to glean something from it that helps you have the edge. And so from a perspective of cybersecurity applications, there's actually systems right now that do or are trying to implement AI strategies like you're talking about in order to crunch data, and then apply that to actual sensor data in the field, right? So like this threat indicator looks like this. We saw that in our environment because we're looking at all of this sensor input, and within some time frame, they've determined that there's a high likelihood of attack. And then the next step of that is automating remediation, right? So that's like your source systems where, like, okay, we saw this thing, what can we do to mitigate it now? Like, oh, let's like block this IP at this point, or, let's shut down this system because it's non-critical. All of those after the fact things that people had to do, they're automating a lot of those things, and it's all based upon crunching the data, and then at the same time having the real-time telemetry that they're looking at.
Nicholas, is there any product or is there any paper or somewhere that I can read more about this? Because I mean, what you're essentially talking about IDs, right? I mean, intrusion detection systems and like automating intrusion detection systems and mitigating the risk as and when it arrives, right? I mean,
I don't know if there's any papers. I mean, like, I don't know if you caught the beginning of this, but I play the role of ChatGPT, so I could have made all this up. I'm not citing any sources.
yeah, okay, got it.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not somebody who like keeps sources at the ready, but if I dig something up, I'll try and send it your way. I reached out to you on LinkedIn.
Got it. Yeah, thank you.
Looks like there was. I know it's getting late, Drew. If you want to cut me off at any time.
No, not at all. It's,
Please do.
you were looking at the question about how is it applied directly, like DevOps SRE kind of stuff. Were you seeing that question in the chat?
So what I would say, show you how to install Prometheus, build pipelines, etc. I don't know. I think that ChatGPT might be able to give you some step-by-step instruction on some of that stuff. Like realistically, installing things is not where the money is right now, right? So like if you're looking to either break into DevOps SRE or get better at it, and learn those things, knowing how to install Prometheus doesn't matter, right? Like most people install it on like Kubernetes clusters and it takes like all 3 seconds to do because, that's what Helm charts are for or whatever. So I think that the biggest thing that I would advocate for is having a really good idea of how things fit together, and how to operate different applications. So like, even if you said like, I don't know anything about Prometheus, stand up K3S on your machine. It'll take you all 3 seconds, right? And like some small Kubernetes distro. You could use Rancher Desktop if you're like Drew and you like a UI, or use a Windows machine, like some sort of goofball. And like now you got a Kubernetes cluster, then what? Like, okay, let's use this Helm chart and throw Prometheus on that. And then like, let's configure it to monitor something. Okay, let's install this example Nginx app or something like that. And now we got Prometheus monitoring it and I can see all this stuff going on. So, I think that it can get you started in some of the things, but the premise of the question, I would say, just shifted a little bit to make sure you're concentrating on the right things, right? Like build your base skills. Like my Linux and network knowledge is core in everything that I've done my entire career, right? Like knowing those things, like, how Linux is put together, how it operates, how it manages memory. I went through, I'm a CEO of a small business. And earlier today, I was walking through Wireshark and like talking about 3-way handshakes with some of my folks, right? So like core network knowledge is always going to be useful, always. And until things like fundamentally change. And I think we're like years and years and years away from that. Build up your core skills and then know how things fit together. and how to operate different things. And you can always fill in the gaps later, right? Like knowing how to install a thing inconsequential, know how it works, know how you would configure it differently to make it work differently. So my 2 cents. So much like we need to do like an ask me anything on becoming a DevOps / SRE. You want to do a panel discussion, Drew?
I think that's a great idea. Can how do we get you to impersonate ChatGPT at the same time that you are Nicholas Hughes? I have to do like
I'll do the whole thing in a French accent.
That'll work.
Yeah.
Man, it's getting late.
Absolutely.
I got a simple question for people who might like download ChatGPT on their phone that might be useful for other people. It automatically signed me up for like the $6.99 payment plan or something like that. If I go into app settings and I like disable that, will it automatically cancel that, or have any of you tried that yet?
No, and I feel like you're getting ripped off, man.
Yeah. I don't.
Whatever app you installed was not sanctioned.
That's not Chat. There's no ChatGPT app I'm aware of.
Or it's called Chatbox. I looked up. Okay. And the name, the title is Chatbox, but I looked up ChatGPT inside the app store.
So I'm going to make a leap here and say that you're younger than me because I have a bunch of gray in my beard and no hair. But I don't trust apps, right? So like when I'm looking for something, I never look app first, and I think that's why I've avoided things like this in the past.
Mm-hmm.
For the record, ChatGPT does work in mobile, so you can just go to the website in your browser.
Yeah, what I'd have literally on my home screen on my phone is I made a shortcut to Chrome that goes to chat.openai.com or .io. That's how I put ChatGPT on my phone. There are no apps that are like, lots of apps are like plugging into it, but there is no official OpenAI ChatGPT app.
Yeah, I better remove this and make sure they don't charge me.
I would encourage that.
Good luck.
I think you won, Nick. I think you.
I wore everybody out.
Yeah, you wore them all out.
Sweet.
Let's see. We'll call that the official end.